Baylor football has a whole crop of talent that are about to make the all Big 12 team. Or at least someone thinks so. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up? Happy Wednesday to you. Welcome into another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by me, your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on Rogue Media Sports Network. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We so appreciate that. As is the case with the month of June, we'll have a little recruiting update, a couple new Bears committing to the cause since we last spoke. Also, the Phil Steele all Big 12 preseason teams came out, and the Bears were pretty well represented. We're going to look at where that came from. And finally, a way for these hated rivals in the rivalry, Baylor and TCU, how we can stick up for the little guys once again and take on tyranny. That's coming up in the show as well. But like I mentioned, obviously a huge month for recruiting. The official visits will end next weekend, if I'm not mistaken. So not this upcoming weekend, but the weekend after. That would be the last weekend in June. And this is the time for those 2025s. It's the time for Baylor to really bolster that 2025 class. And it obviously took a hit after Adam Schobel decommitted and committed to Oklahoma State. We had a decommitment last week from Cash Courtney of Carthage High going over to Arkansas. But there have been a couple more through the door in that time as well. Bo Onu is one of them from Hebron High School. We're going to talk about him a little bit, but also Trent Spence is the big one that jumped out for me. Both guys on the defensive side of the ball. Onu is a safety, Spence at the linebacker position. Spence coming from Klein Collins High School out in Spring. So both those guys are 3 stars and guys who are kind of gaining traction in this offseason from what you can see from their offers. So that offseason between their junior and senior season. And when I look at Spence in particular, there's a lot I like there. Okay. I like the physical tools, but I also like the decision that he's made in context, not just picking Baylor, but over some of the schools that he did pick them over. And some of the things he has said about this Baylor program, are things that I really like. It's the Bears' 10th commitment in the 2025 recruiting cycle. And this is a Jamar Chaney victory. It really is. Spence did a sit down with our pal Will Turboff of Bears Illustrated 247, who is like my hero, my life giver in this month of June. He's always great. I mean, I will brag on him all month. I don't care. He's always great at keeping his finger on the pulse of this Baylor recruiting deal for football. There we go. But especially here in June, where it's all starting to heat up outside and within that Baylor football facility as well. But what kept coming up in this story is Jamar Chaney, who is out there as the linebacker coach, and he is the one making these big recruiting pushes. Just a couple of quotes here. This first one from Trent Spence. I think I'm going to be able to play a lot early at Baylor because they're going to move the inside backer on a lot of blitzes. They move around a lot. I think that fits me in my game real nice. I know it's not for everybody, but I love when these recruits get a little inside football with us. I'm willing to admit, and I know that you guys who follow along probably already know this. I'm not like, I couldn't go out there and be a football coach tomorrow. I don't know that much strategy, but I love when we get kind of an inside scoop on what these guys are thinking from a football sense. And we've heard it a couple of times this year. I think of the 2 Western Kentucky guys through the portal, and now Trent Spence in the high school ranks. We also talked with Edward Griffin about it on the offensive side of the ball, but making specific cases as to why Baylor is going to be a good fit for them. And why I really like it is not just for us, the fans, to hear, but that tells me that's what these coaches are telling them. Because it from what I've heard from recruits, it ain't always like that. It's like, hey, you're so great, and we think you're going to do well here, and look at how great our facilities are, and wouldn't you want to put on the uniform? And instead, what we're hearing is, we feel like priority to these coaches. They do want to know about us outside of the football field. They want to know us as better, well-rounded students and people, but also we get to talk ball with them a lot. And they've seen, and this is a backwards way of helping Baylor, but they see, the 2023 team. And while it's not a good season, a lot of guys are seeing the field at a young age. And so these top end prospects who are, getting Baylor on their table, their Baylor cap on the table, are thinking, man, I could make an impact right away. And in today's day and age, that means I can make NIL money pretty quick. And so that is a motivation, I'm sure, for a lot of these kids. Spence didn't say that, so I'm not going to say Trent Spence is just looking for money. That's not true. But I love when they're able to point that out. And he says when Chaney is talking to you, you can tell he knows what he's talking about. He played in the NFL, so he has seen it all. And this is coming from Turboff. In addition to Chaney, Spence said that he's eager to learn more from Dave Aranda. With Aranda expected to have a larger role in the Bears linebacker room in 2024, Spence recalled all of Aranda's accolades and how players at the position will improve. He said, quote, "I mean, it's Aranda. He won the national championship at LSU, and that wasn't too long ago. They won the Big 12 championship at Baylor a couple years ago, so I know he can turn things around." That, to me, also sticks out because we are looking at a short timeline, short memory when we talk to these high school recruits, right? So when things are 3 or 4 years ago, for us, the fan, and people my age or above, we remember that because it wasn't that long ago in our eyes. When you're 17 or 16, 4 years ago, you might not have been paying attention, you know? And here he's saying, I remember 5 years ago, they won the national championship. I remember 3 years ago, they won the Big 12, had their best season ever. I know it wasn't that great this year, but hey, I see the success that he's been able to put out there, both as a defensive coordinator and as a head coach. Oh, and by the way, his older brother plays at Arkansas, so has already committed to Baylor without taking a look at Arkansas too seriously, and had 2 other official visits scheduled, one for the University of California, the other for our pals at the University of Utah. Canceled them both, said, nope, I'm in on Baylor. I've got Utah winning the Big 12 this year. And I like when a recruit in our backyard, which has been tough for Baylor at times, is saying, nah, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. I'm good where I'm at right now with Baylor. So I just like seeing the positives about that. So once again, thank you to Will Turboff for getting some great quotes in there. That's something that I have been tracking and will continue to track in terms of what these guys are saying about the coaching staff, specifically on that defensive side. The offensive side is going to sound exciting no matter what. But to bring in guys like Jamar Chaney, and obviously how much is Matt Powledge talking to these guys? How much is Dave Aranda talking to these guys as the head coach, but also with a focus on defense? So glad to hear that those things are looking up in the eyes of these kids coming in for the 2025 class. Okay, passion, drive, patience. What do those 3 words mean to you? Because what they mean to me is the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, all those things you'll see on the Baylor offense this year, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And we'll also throw in eBay's guaranteed fit, which means your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because here at eBay Motors, you are burning rubber. You're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. That guaranteed fit only available to our U.S. customers, and that is eBay. Motors.com. That's a little look at the future Bears on the gridiron. And in the near future, as in the 2024 football season, we are full steam ahead looking at that, man. We are just over 2 months from kickoff, which seems crazy. Like, we had so much invested in that basketball season. and we just had pro basketball just end, and here we are. We're staring right at the teeth of the college football season. And, we're a couple of weeks away from media days, which really starts to ramp things up. But some assembled media has already picked their all Big 12 teams. They're all conference teams. And one of those is Phil Steele. That came out on Tuesday. And boy, howdy, your Baylor Bears, my Baylor Bears, our Baylor Bears have 6 preseason all Big 12 selections for Phil Steele. Wow. Is that a humongous number? Do they lead the conference? No. But 6 seems big when you consider how many all Big 12 performers they had after the season last year. Because with 6 preseason all Big 12 guys, that's 6 more guys than they had on the postseason all Big 12 teams last year. So yeah, it's okay to be skeptical and maybe a little cynical like I am in this case and say, where did that come from? Where did we get these preseason all Big 12 players? We added more teams to the conference. We didn't have anybody on the list last year at the end of the season, and here we are with 6. Okay. Interesting. Now, when you hear some of these names, you're not going to disagree with some of them, I would say. So you got Caden Jenkins, Alvin Abicelli, Monterey Baldwin, Matt Jones, Josh Cameron, Richard Reese. Okay. Richard Reese, sure, man. I mean, we saw a big flash from him for his freshman year. Surprised to see that he stayed. Glad that he stayed because I think there's a lot of potential in there. And we saw it certainly in the kick return game in that season finale against West Virginia. Oh, that's how he makes the team. His first team in the kick return. I think Richard Reese has a chance to get there as a running back, even with the extended teams. But he is first team kick return. Josh Cameron, second team punt return. Again, I like him as a piece at receiver. Matt Jones, who I thought was underrated last year when things around him were not going well. I thought he put together a pretty good individual season. Did not make an all Big 12 team last year. He's on the second team for the preseason for Phil Steele. Monterey Baldwin. Sure. I thought that would have been Baylor's closest offensive selection last year. Actually, Drake Dabney. I think Monterey could once again have a breakout season. And hopefully this is just the style of offense he needs. Alvin Abicelli, guy who came in with a bunch of hype. He's been injured and redshirted, so this is not his fault. He's barely seen the field. And he's listed as a third team offensive tackle. I hope so. I get tickled by these things. And Caden Jenkins. See, I got a problem with everything because I see Caden Jenkins at third team cornerback. If you had to ask me, hey, who is going to be an all conference player for you guys this year of the 22, not on special teams, I would have said Caden Jenkins. Potentially as a second team or potentially even as a first team guy. And he's on the third team by Phil Steele. So I don't know where it's coming from. That's all. And I tried to think even of some of the new guys coming in and whether any of these guys in my optimism would make an all Big 12 team by the end of the season. And of course, the first name I thought of, mainly because of the position, was Taquan Finn. Here's a MAC player of the year, kid who comes in with some hype at the lower level and has a lot of people liking what they saw on the practice field. Is this a guy who can get there as an all conference player? This is no disrespect to Taquan Finn, but I think that's a tough ask. I think that's a really tough ask when you look at the quarterbacks in this conference. It is deep and at the least promising, if not pretty good, right? You got Fafita, however you say that, at Arizona. You've got Daniels at Kansas. Will Howard was gone, but they love Avery Johnson at Kansas State and what he can bring. Obviously, Cam Rising at Utah and Shedeur Sanders at Colorado. There's a lot of quarterback talent in this conference. And that's not even mentioning one of my dogs that I like in Rocco Becht. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this conference all of a sudden. Like quite suddenly, they throw that at you. Gary Bohannon, too. Don't forget my man, Gary Bohannon, who might be my favorite quarterback in the conference. Only one I've had a college class with, Gary Bohannon at BYU. Obviously, the class was at Baylor. So it's tough for me to think DeQuan Finn. I also like some of their slot guys that aren't named Monterey Baldwin. Baldwin's my favorite, but I look at someone like Jamal Bell, who's coming in from Nevada, who the coaches have raved about so far. And I've heard plenty of unprompted good things about Bell. And the other one I think about is Ashton Hawkins, who comes in from Texas State, a guy who was pretty productive at Texas State and one of the few like real productive guys under Spavital at Texas State, and has done well in some games against Baylor too. Could he be an all-conference guy? Potentially. I'm high on Ashton Hawkins. And on the defensive side of the ball, you guys know I like Kendrick Simpkins. Okay. I called him like the diet Rodney Harrison. That kid's a playmaker at the safety position, and he is a hard hitter, a playmaker, not just in the passing game. He can make plays in the running game. He is a hard hitter. He's a very physical player. I like him, and I like his Western Kentucky teammate that came with him with Jamar Chaney, and that's Jaquez Evans, who I think has the strongest case to be an all Big 12 player on the defensive side of the ball that's not named Caden Jenkins. Evans was just a stud at Western Kentucky before he missed the back half of last season with an injury. I mean, again, he was the preseason defensive player of the year in Conference USA. He was first team all Conference USA the year before. He just parties in the other team's backfield all season long. So if I had to pick another guy to be up there for both units, both offense and defense, because special teams, I think they probably got that covered. Richard Reese and Josh Cameron. Although I would love to see Monterey Baldwin back there taking punts. I know he's done it a little bit in the past. I know it's more than just being very fast, but that is such an advantage with the vision and the speed that he's got. Anyway, so if I could pick one extra on offense and defense, offensively, I'm going to go with, I'm not going to pick Richard Reese because he is picked for, he's there. I know he's there for special teams, but I'm not going to pick him for offense. I'd pick Dawson Pendergrass because I like Ashton Hawkins too. But I think we could see Dawson Pendergrass in some more passing situations this year. I think he could be more of a pass catching back. And I think that's going to keep him on the field with hopefully a resurgent Richard Reese and Dominic Richardson. I think that's a way for him to get on the field and get some playing time. And on the defensive side, I will rock with Jaquez Evans, the edge rusher. As long as he's healthy, man, he is productive. He is hella productive. I know we said the same thing about Jackson Player, but I think it's a little bit more, I think it's a little easier to turn that over as an edge rusher rather than an interior guy, stats wise. Anyway, this is supposed to be an interactive exercise. So please drop down in the comments or tweet at us at Locked On Baylor who you think should be up there for all Big 12 consideration. Offense, defense, special teams. If I'm missing someone great on special teams, if I'm missing a real good gunner, let me know. I don't think they give out all Big 12 awards for that. But drop that down in the comments below. I would like to hear who y'all are looking at and saying, hey, they're sleeping on this guy. Because one of the benefits of coming off a 3-9 team is if you like your players getting slept on, that's what happens. That's what happens big time in these situations. Today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. We've got summertime. All right. We've just wrapped up the NBA finals. We might have just wrapped up the NHL last night. Who can tell? Summertime means baseball is in full swing. We've got Olympics this year too. So the more that's going on, the more you can bet on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from, who's going to be the Conn Smythe winner in the NHL to who's going to hit one out of the park in tomorrow's game in baseball. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and add a big win to your summer bucket list. That's FanDuel.com/locked-on. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, rivalries are one of the great things that separate college athletics and specifically college football from most other sports, right? That is the lifeblood of why we are fans, okay? So that every week you can say, I hope my team wins, but maybe just as much, I hope they freaking lose. I'll root for anyone else in the country if they're playing my rival. And for a lot of Baylor fans, that's TCU. And for a lot of TCU fans, that's Baylor. There's really not a lot of love lost there, especially in the last 10 or 12 years. Really a good deal of animosity between these two. And the rivalry or the Blue Bonnet battle. Okay, the rivalry. Even to the point where we're disputing that. Baylor wanted to keep it the rivalry, but TCU wanted to back away from the church thing, so they made them do something like the Blue Bonnet battle, and then their AD Donati just called in sick to the announcement. Bush League, come on. See, this is what happens. We get riled up thinking about our rival, right? But there is a special time every once in a while where you and your rival can team up for the greater good and bond over justice. Okay. It was kind of that way with the Hateful Eight in the new Big 12, but there was 8 of us. But Baylor and TCU can really team up this time because they have been served a great injustice, and it is a microcosm of a bigger problem in college football. What Baylor and TCU can do, they can team up to take down the tyranny that is Nike, and specifically Nike college football uniform templates. Okay? Because TCU unveiled their new uniforms this week, and they also suck. Again, similar to the Baylor ones, the last 2 iterations now, very basic. Nothing written on there, just purple, 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 white, 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 black, black, black. Who's asking for this? Who is asking for, let's do color rush uniforms with no writing on them? That's what people are going to like. Who is doing this? And what's amazing to me, if you follow soccer, Nike tried this like 7 or 8 years ago in the Premier League, and they were like, let's try this where it's just basic, no bells and whistles, just crest, sponsor, color. And it wasn't very well received, like at all. It was, and they moved away from it after about 2 years. But with college football, it's not every year. You're locked in for 4 or 5 years, depending on these deals. And we're getting screwed. We're getting screwed with this. Baylor got screwed back in 2019 and screwed again this time. And this came up in the discourse on social media from some Baylor fans. And I heard something similar in that Baylor was really hoping to do some more with these uniforms. And they had laid out a couple of ideas, and Nike said, nope, we want basic, we want template. And that's what they did to Baylor, and that's what they did to TCU. Do I think TCU had one of the best football uniforms in the country? No. Thought it was good, though. It was solid. It was unique. They had that pattern on the collar, that kind of an Argyle type of pattern. Like that's unique. That's something that stood out. And if you look back at the Baylor uniforms we all love, they had the bear paws on the side, right? And they had Baylor here, and they had a unique font. And so what Nike has done to both of us is they said, hey, those things that are kind of cool and unique on your uniforms that other teams don't have that make your uniform stand out, get rid of them. Get them the hell off the uniform. That's what people are going to like. Those things that make your uniform stand out, toss them aside. I am passionate about this. Okay? I like uniforms a lot. And as I said, when the Baylor uniforms came out, There are some teams and programs that can go basic, and it works like a charm. Okay? Texas, Oklahoma, Penn State, USC, Notre Dame. Great. Go with God. They'll never mess that up doing that. There are some of us who don't have this uniform pedigree that we can just be boring all the time and look down on anyone who dare not be boring. We are not like that. We have a great palette. And by the way, so does TCU. It's a unique palette. I don't love purple, but not a lot of teams have it. And instead of Nike saying, hey, this is our chance, Baylor and TCU are on the whole pretty good football programs that get into major bowl games every couple of years. In one case, a national championship game. In one case, winning their New Year's Six bowl. Like, why don't we use this as a platform to be cool with our uniforms? Let's try some things out, and well, that's what they should be doing. Let's try some things out. Let's guinea pig some of these schools, and say, and if it's not great, we'll change it in 2 years. But we want to keep rolling out things. We can't do that with Penn State and Oklahoma and USC, but we could do it with Baylor and TCU and some bigger schools too, like Oregon. But it seems like now Oregon is the only one they put any kind of effort into. Phil Knight's alma mater. Like, it's the only one that gets even like its own design, not just picking a template and throwing your team's colors on it. God, this is as passionate as I've been on the show in months, man. Like, it just sucks. It sucks. And it is a small thing, and it will never matter when the team is winning, right? It never does. But when it's not, it's just adding another thing on there. Like, oh, we stink, and so do our uniforms. So we need to make some noise. Iowa State, too. Iowa State has also gotten screwed by this Nike thing, I think. We can band together here. We can put a stop to this madness. It'll just burying the hatchet. And while we're at it, let's just bury the Bluebonnet Trophy with it. I think that's probably a good idea. Anyway, let me know what you think about Nike uniforms and what they are doing to the sanctity of college football. Drop that down in the comments below. Also, how you're feeling about this new crop of the 2025 class. Can they get back to those numbers that they were at in terms of rankings before they lost to Adam Schobel, or does that even matter? Drop that down in the comments below, or just say, hey, congratulate me on the Celtics victory, or say, hey, Cam, I hate you because of that Celtics victory. I'll take any and all of it. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We super appreciate that. Be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell on YouTube, and you will get notified when we drop all our episodes, which do all drop on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back later on this week. Your favorite show, Locked on Baylor.